Dear students, let us begin a new chapter. Patol Babu, Filmstar, written by Satyajit Ray. The author Satyajit Ray was born in 1921 and died 1992. He was born in Kolkata, an Indian filmmaker who wrote and made films in Bengali. He is widely regarded as one of the greatest filmmakers of the 20th century. Ray directed 36 films, including feature films, documentaries, and short stories. He was also a fiction writer, publisher, illustrator, calligrapher, music composer, graphic designer, and film critic. He authored several short stories and novels, primarily aimed at children and adolescents. In 1992, Satyajit Ray received the Honorary Academy Award Lifetime Achievement. Ray is the first and the only Indian yet to receive the honor. The Academy Award or Oscars is an annual American awards ceremony hosted by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences AMPS to recognize excellence in cinematic achievements in the United States. Now, summary of Patol Babu, a film star. The summary of the lesson Patol Babu, film star is given below. You can also see the explanation of the lesson after the summary. Patol Babu lived in Calcutta and worked in a company. However, due to the war, he lost his 9-year-old job. Then he tried many jobs and businesses but failed. His cousin offered him to join a scrap iron business. One morning, Nishikanto Ghosh visited Patul Babu and told him that his brother-in-law, Naresh Dutt, who worked in film business, needed a short, bald-headed man around 50 years of age for his film. He suggested Patol's name to him. Patol accepted the offer of the role of a pedestrian. Next morning, he reaches the venue, Faraday House, his heart trembling with nervousness. But the problem was that he was still not given the dialogue. He asked for his dialogue, and Naresh Dutt asked his colleagues Susanko and Jyoti to give the lines to Patol Babu. Jyoti tore off a page and wrote something and gave it to Patol Babu. The word "oh" was written on the page. Patul Babu became very sad to see that his dialogue was just the word "oh." As he was sitting dejected, a faint memory stirred up in his mind. It was Mr. Pakrasi, Patul Babu's mentor, who had advised him not to consider any role small and to put in his maximum effort to perform it to his utmost capability. He rehearsed his dialogue and spoke the word "oh" in different pitches and feelings. He realized that he could present the role and dialogue in many ways and was keen to perform well. Patul put in his best and performed well. He was so satisfied with his performance that he felt that taking money would undermine his efforts and so left the place without taking money. Now let us have the explanation line by line of the lesson. Patul Babu had just hung his shopping bag on his shoulder when Nishikanto Babu called from outside the main door. Patul, are you in? Oh yes, said Patul Babu. Just a minute. Explanation is the writer introduces the main character of the story Patul Babu. Patul Babu was leaving for the market with his shopping bag on his shoulder. Just then Nishikanto Ghosh came and called out to him. Patul Babu asked him to wait for a minute. Nishikanto Ghosh lived 3 houses away from Patul Babu in Nepal, Bhattacharji Lane. He was a genial person. Lane means here a narrow road. Genial means friendly or warm. Explanation of the above lines is the writer tells us that Nishikanto Ghosh is Patul Babu's neighbor. They both live three houses apart in a street called Nepal Bhattacharji Lane. Nishikanto is a friendly person. Further lines are Patul Babu came out with the bag. What brings you here so early in the morning? Listen, what time will you be back? In an hour or so. Why? Explanation is Patul Babu asked the purpose of Nishikanto's early morning visit. In reply, Nishikanto asks him that by what time he would be back home. Patul replied that he would be back in an hour's time. Further lines are I hope you will stay in after that. Today, being Tagore's birthday, I met my youngest brother in law in Netaji Pharmacy yesterday. He is in the film business in the production department. He said he was looking for an actor for a scene in a film they are now shooting. The way he described the character, 50s, short, bald headed, it reminded me of you. So I gave him your address and asked him to get in touch with you directly. I hope you won't turn him away. They will pay you, of course. Bald means having no or little hair on the head. Pharmacy means a shop or hospital dispensary where medical drugs are prepared or sold. Explanation of the above lines is Nishikanto was hopeful that Patul would remain at home for the rest of the day as it was a holiday because Rabindranath Tagore's birthday. Rabindranath Tagore was a famous writer and poet from West Bengal. He further told Patul Babu that his youngest brother in law was in the production department of a film company. They had met the day before. His brother in law was looking for a person to perform the role of a man who had particular features. He described them as his age must be around 50, he should be short and bald headed. When Nishikanto heard this, he was reminded of Patul Babu, who seemed perfect for the said role. He had given Patul Babu reference to his brother in law and had asked him to contact Patul Babu directly. He wanted him to meet his brother in law and even lured him by saying that he would be paid money for performing the role. Patul Babu hadn't expected such news at the start of the day that an offer to act in a film could come to a 52-year-old non-entity like him was beyond his wildest dreams. Non-entity means here an unimportant person or thing. Beyond his wildest dreams means something which is next to impossible for a person. Explanation is the purpose of Nishikanto Ghosh's early morning visit was to give this news to Patul Babu. Patul Babu could not believe the news. He considered himself to be worthless. A person like him could never dream of getting an offer of a role in a film. Further lines are, well, yes or no? Asked Nishikanto Babu, I believe you did some acting on the stage at one time. Explanation is Nishikanto asked Patul if he was interested in the offer or not. He also confirmed that Patul Babu had been a stage artist in the past. Further lines from the text are That's true, said Patul Babu. I really don't see why I should say no. But let us talk to your brother in law first and find out some details. What is his name? Naresh Dutt. Naresh. He's about 30, a strapping young fellow. He said he would be here around 10:30. A strapping young fellow means a person who is strong, tall and looks to be active and healthy. Explanation is Patul Babu confirmed that he had been a stage artist and that he had no reason to refuse the offer. Although before confirming he wanted some details from Nishikanto's brother-in-law, he asked Nishikanto about his brother-in-law's name. Nishikanto replied that his name was Naresh Dutt. He was tall, strong and active. He would be coming to meet Patul Babu at around 10:30 that morning. Buying provisions in the market, Patul Babu mixed up his wife's orders and bought red chilies instead of onion seeds, and he quite forgot about the aubergines. This was not surprising. At one time, Patul Babu had a real passion for the stage. In fact, it verged on obsession in jatras, in amateur theatricals, in plays put up by the club in his neighborhood. Patul Babu was always in demand. His name had appeared in handbills on countless occasions. Once it appeared in bold type near the top, Sitala Kantore, Patul Babu, in the role of Parasar. Indeed, there was a time when people bought tickets especially to see him. Aubergines means brinjal, a vegetable. Worst means to be very close to. Obsession means a state in which he could not think of anything else. Amateur means non-professional. Yatra means is a Bengali word. The original word is yatra, Sanskrit, which means a journey. Yatras is a popular folk theatre form of Bengali theatre. Theatricals means play performed in a theatre. Handbill means a small printed sheet for advertisement. Explanation of the above lines is the early morning offer of an acting role took Patul Babu into his past and reminded him of his early years when he performed in Bengali folk theatre as the lead actor. He had been a famous actor, and the advertisements of the play had carried his name on the top. He had a huge fan following, and many people would buy tickets for the show just to see him act. Patul Babu was so absorbed in his thoughts that he forgot the items which his wife had sent him to buy. He bought red chilies instead of onion seeds and forgot to buy aubergines. As Patul Babu had been a passionate actor, the acting offer reignited the enthusiasm once again. For the lines from the text are, that was when he used to live in Kancharapara. He had a job in the railway factory there. In 1934, he was offered higher pay in a clerical post with Hudson and Kimberley in Calcutta, and was also lucky to find a flat in Nepal Bhattacharji Lane. He gave up his factory job and came to Calcutta with his wife. It was quite smooth sailing for some years, and Patul Babu was in his boss' good books. In 1943, when he was just toying with the idea of starting a club in his neighborhood, sudden retrenchment in his office due to the war cost him his 9-year-old job. Smooth sailing means here having no problems. Toying with the idea means considering an idea. Retrenchment means cutting down. The writer gives a flashback of Patul Babu's life. Patul Babu acted on a stage when he lived in a town called Kancharapara. At that time, he worked at the railway factory. In the year 1934, he shifted to Calcutta as he had secured a clerical job in a company by the name of Hudson and Kimberley. He took a flat in a street, Nepal Bhattacharji Lane, to live in. He had a good time for 9 years and was thinking of starting an acting club in his neighborhood. However, the idea could not materialize. The company dismissed many of its employees in order to reduce its expenditure. This happened because of the World War. The company, being in multinational company, was incurring losses. Patul Babu was one of the dismissed employees. So this was the explanation of the above lines. For the lines from the textbook are, ever since then Patul Babu had struggled to make a living. At first he opened a variety store which he had to wind up after 5 years. Then he had a job in Bengali firm which he gave up in disgust. When his boss began to treat him in too high-handed a fashion, then for 10 long years, starting as an insurance salesman, Patul Babu tried every means of earning a livelihood without ever succeeding in improving his lot. Of late, he has been paying regular visits to a small establishment dealing in scrap iron where a cousin of his has promised him a job. Struggle to make a living means had a difficult time earning enough money. Scrap means a small piece or amount of something. Explanation of the above lines is after that he struggled to earn a living. He did many things, opened a store, worked in a Bengali firm as an insurance salesman. He was unsuccessful in these as he closed the store after 5 years, gave up the job after a fight with the boss, and after 10 years of struggle, gave up the work of being an insurance salesman also. Then he was trying to secure a job at the shop of a scrap dealer with the help of a cousin of his. And acting, that has become a thing of the remote past, something which he calls recalls at times with a sigh. That has become a thing of the remote past, something which he recalls at times with a sigh. Sometimes remembers past events and experiences fondly. Having a good memory, Patul Babu still remembers lines from some of his better parts. Listen, oh listen to the thunderous twang of the mighty bow. Gandiva, this was the name of the bow, engaged in gory conflict, and to the angry roar of the mountainous club whizzing through the air in the hands of the great Brigodra. It sent a shiver down his spine just to think of such lines. Twang means a strong ringing sound, mighty means powerful, gory means violent, whizzing means move quickly. Explanation of the above lines is Patul Babu had a good memory and he could recollect some of his famous dialogues. Then he recites one of them in his mind. The thought that such an impressive dialogue had been spoken by him was unbelievable for him. He trembled to think that he had spoken these lines sometime in the past. Further lines are Naresh Dutt turned up at 12:30. Patul Babu had given up hope and was about to go for his bath when there was a knock on the front door. Finally, Naresh Dutt reached Patul Babu's house at 12:30. Patul Babu had been waiting for him since 10:30 and had lost hope that he would turn up. As he was about to go for a bath, there was a knock at the door of his house. This is the explanation of the above lines. Further lines are come in, sir. Patul Babu almost dragged the young man in and pushed the broken armchair towards him to sit down. Dragged means pull roughly. Explanation is Patul Babu was excited to see Naresh Dutt and in his excitement almost dragged him inside the house and pushed a chair with a broken arm towards him to sit in. No thanks. I. Oh yes, I must say I was quite taken aback after so many years. I hope you have no objection. You think I will be alright for the part? Patul Babu asked with great diffidence. Diffidence means modesty or shyness resulting from a lack of self-confidence. Explanation of the above lines is Naresh Dutt was taken by surprise and Patul Babu said that he was surprised to get the acting of offer after so many years. Naresh inquired if he had any objections, but on the contrary, Patul seemed modest and asked if he was suitable for the role. Naresh Dutt cast an appraising look at Patul Babu and gave a nod. Oh, yes, he said. There is no doubt about that. By the way, the shooting takes place tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, Sunday. Appraising look means to consider or examine somebody or something and form an opinion about that person or thing. Explanation is Naresh Dutt checked out Patul Babu and confirmed that he was suitable for the role. He further said that undoubtedly he was the best option for the role. Naresh Dutt further informs Patul that shooting is scheduled for the next day. Patul was surprised and asked tomorrow Sunday as he thought that he had very less time to prepare for it. Further lines from the text are Yes, and not in the studio. I will tell you where you have to go. You know Faraday House near the crossing of Bentinck Street and Mission Row? It's a 7-story office building. The shooting takes place outside the office in front of the entrance. We will expect you there at 8:30 sharp. You will be through by midday. Story means air floor. Explanation is Naresh Dutt confirmed that the shooting would take place the next day, which was a Sunday, and gave him directions of the venue, which was not a studio but a building by the name of Faraday House located near the crossing of Bentinck Street and Mission Row. He told him that it was a 7 storied building. Patul Babu was supposed to report at 8:30 in the morning outside the office in front of the main entrance. He further told him that he would be free by noon. Naresh Dutt prepared to leave. But you haven't told me about the part, said Patul Babu anxiously. Oh yes, sorry. The part is that of a pedestrian, an absent-minded, short-tempered pedestrian. By the way, do you have a jacket which buttons up to the neck? Anxiously means eagerly. Pedestrian means a person traveling on foot. Explanation is as Naresh Dutt was about to leave, Patul Babu got eager and asked him for details of the role. Naresh Babu apologized for not telling him earlier and said that the role was of an absent-minded, short-tempered pedestrian. He asked Patul Babu if he had a jacket with buttons up to the neck. I think I do. You mean the old-fashioned kind? Yes, that's what you will wear. What color is it? Sort of nut brown but woolen. That's okay. The story is supposed to take place in winter, so that would be just right. Tomorrow at 8:30 sharp, Faraday House. Patul Babu replied that he had an old-fashioned jacket. He gave details that it was brown in color and was made of woolen fabric. Naresh said that it would be perfect as the story was set in the winter season. He confirmed the day, time and venue once again and was about to leave. Patul Babu suddenly thought of a crucial question. I hope the part calls for some dialogue. Certainly it is speaking part. You have acted before, haven't you? Well, as a matter of fact, yes. Crucial means decisive or critical. Explanation is just then Patul Babu interrupted him with another important question. He asked if there were any dialogues for him. Naresh confirmed that it was obvious and asked if he had acted earlier. Patul Babu replied that he had acted earlier. Fine, I wouldn't have come to you for just a walk on part. For that we pick people from the street. Of course, there's dialogue and you will be given your lines as soon as you show up tomorrow. Naresh Dutt said that he had worked upon the character given to Patul Babu as it was not merely one in which the person had to appear in front of the camera. For such roles, they picked up passers-by from the street. The role given to Patul Babu was important and there were dialogues in it which would be told to him the next day when he would turn up for the shooting. Further lines from the text are after Naresh Dutt left, Patol Babu broke the news of his wife. As far as I can see, the part isn't a big one. I'll be paid, of course, but that's not the main thing. The thing is, remember how I started on the stage? Remember my first part? I played a dead soldier. All I had to do was lie still on the stage with my arms and legs spread, and remember how I rose from that position. After Naresh Dutt left, Patul Babu told his wife about the offer he had got. He analyzed that, although the role was not a big one, he would be paid for it. The money was not as important as his passion for acting. Patul recollected the characters played by him in the past. His first role was of a dead soldier in which all he had to do was to lie down still with his arms and legs spread out. He tells his wife that after that first role, he went on to become the leading actor of his time. Remember Mr. Watts shaking me by the hand and the silver medal which the chairman of our municipality gave me. Remember, this is only the first step on the ladder, my dear better half. Yes, the first step that would, God willing, mark the rise to fame and fortune of your beloved husband. Rise to fame and fortune means becoming famous and wealthy. Explanation is Patul Babu asked his wife if she remembered that Mr. Watts, probably a well known man, had shook hands with him and congratulated him. Also, he had been awarded the silver medal by the chairman of the municipality. Patul asserts that the offer was the first step on the ladder to success. He further says that if God wanted, then soon he would become famous and wealthy. Counting your chickens again before they are hatched, are you? No wonder you could never make a go of it. Counting your chickens again before they are hatched, are you? Means dream of becoming successful and make plans that depend on something good happening before you know that it has actually happened. Patul Babu's wife warned him that he was being over ambitious as nothing had materialized yet. But it is the real thing this time. Go and make me a cup of tea, will you? And remind me to take some ginger juice tonight. It is very good for the throat. Patul Babu insisted that this time he would taste success for sure. He orders her to make a cup of tea for him. He also tells him to remind him to take ginger juice at bedtime as it is good for the throat and would help him deliver the dialogue well the next day. This shows that he was a fine actor as he wanted to perform well. So, this is the explanation. Further lines are the clock in the Metropolitan building showed 7 minutes past even when Patul Babu reached Esplanade. It took him another 10 minutes to walk to Faraday House. As Patul Babu reached a place called Esplanade, the clock at the Metropolitan building showed the time as 7 minutes past 8. He reached Faraday House, the venue, in another 10 minutes. This shows that he was a punctual man as he reached well in time. There was a big crowd outside the building. 3 or 4 cars stood on the road. There was also a bus which carried equipment on its roof. On the edge of the pavement, there was an instrument on 3 legs around which there was a group of busy people. Equipment means the necessary tools or machines. Pavement means footpath. As he reached Faraday House, he noticed there was a huge crowd. There were 3, 4 cars and a bus which had all the tools and machines on its roof. At the edge of the pavement stood an instrument having 3 legs. It was surrounded by a group of men who were probably setting it. Near the entrance, also on 3 legs, a pole which had a long arm extending from its top, at the end of which was suspended what looked like a small oblong beehive. Surrounding these instruments was a crowd of people. Among them, Patul Babu noticed some non Bengalis. What they were supposed to do, he couldn't tell. Oblong means a rectangular object or flat figure with unequal adjacent sides. Beehive means a dome shape structure where bees are kept. Explanation is the writer describes another equipment which was placed near the entrance. It also had 3 legs. It was a pole with a long arm which extended from its top end and suspended a device which looked like an oblong shaped beehive. Patul Babu noticed that among the crowd there were some non Bengalis, and also he did not know the reason for their being there. But where was Naresh Dutt? He was the only one who knew him. With a slight tremor in his heart, Patul Babu advanced towards the entrance. It was the middle of summer, and the warm jacket buttoned up to his neck felt heavy. Patul Babu could feel beads of perspiration forming around the high collar, tremor, tremble, shake. Perspiration means the process of sweating. Explanation is Naresh Dutt was nowhere to be seen. Patul Babu did not know anyone else in the crew. He felt uneasy and walked up to the entrance hesitatingly, as the weather was hot and he was wearing a woolen jacket with the buttons closed up to the neck. He started sweating and could feel the drops of sweating forming on his neck. This way, Atul Babu. Just then Naresh Dutt called out to him and wrongly took his name as Atul Babu. Atul Babu, Patul Babu spotted Naresh Dutt standing at the entrance and gesturing towards him. He had got his name wrong. No wonder, since they had only had a brief meeting. Patul Babu walked up, put his palm together in a namaskar and said, I supposed you haven't yet noted down my name. Sitalakantu Ray, although people know me better by my nickname Patul, I used it on the stage too. Gesturing sign or signal. Explanation is Patul Babu saw that Naresh Dutt was standing at the entrance of the building. He realized that Naresh Dutt had got his name wrong but was not angry, as they had only met once before and that too for a short duration. Patul walked up to him and greeted him by folding his hands. He told him that his real name was Sitala Kanturi, but he was better known by his nickname Patul, which was used by him as an actor also. Good, good. I must say you are quite punctual. Punctual, doing something at the agreed or proper time. Naresh praised Patul for being on time. Patul Babu rose to his full height. Further lines from the text are I was with Hudson and Kimberley for 9 years and wasn't late for a single day. Is that so? Well, I suggest you go and wait in the shade there. We have a few things to attend to before we get going. Patul Babu became proud of himself. He told Naresh that he had worked with Hudson and Kimberley for 9 long years and was never late for office. Naresh acknowledged his words and asked him to wait in the shade for his turn. He said that they had to do some preparation for the shooting. Naresh, somebody standing by the three-legged instrument called out. A person who was standing next to the three-legged instrument called out to Naresh Dutt. This is the explanation. Sir, yes sir. He is here, that shot where they bump into each other. Bump, crash. Naresh addressed him as sir and told him that Patul was supposed to perform in the scene where they bump into each other. Okay, now clear the entrance, will you? We are about to start. The man ordered him to remove everyone from the entrance as they had to start the shooting. Patul Babu withdrew and stood in the shade of a pawn shop. He had never watched a film shooting before. How hard these people worked. A youngster of 20 or so was carrying that three-legged instrument on his shoulder, must weigh at least 60 pounds. Patul Babu moved back and stood in the shade of a pawn shop. He had not watched a film shooting earlier and was amazed at the amount of hard work done by the crew. He saw a young boy who would be around 20 years of age carrying a huge and heavy three-legged instrument on his shoulder. He estimated that the weight of the instrument would be around 60 pounds. So this is the explanation. Further lines from the text are but what about his dialogue? There wasn't much time left and he still didn't know what he was supposed to do or say. Patul recollected that he did not know his dialogue, he did not have much time left and still he did not know what he was supposed to do in the role. Patul Babu suddenly felt a little nervous. Should he ask somebody? There was Naresh Dutt there. Should he go and remind him? It didn't matter if the part was small, but if he had to make the most of it, he had to learn his lines beforehand. How small he would feel if he muffled in the presence of so many people. The last time he acted on a stage was 20 years ago. Muffed means handle badly. Explanation is Patul was nervous and anxious. He thought of walking up to Naresh and ask for the details. He felt that although his role was a small one, he had to perform it well. He had to learn his dialogue. He did not want to perform badly in front of such a huge audience. He was to act after a long gap of 20 years. Patul was about to step forward when he was pulled up short by a voice shouting silence. Patol Babu was stopped by a voice which shouted the word silence. This was followed by Naresh Dutt loudly announcing with hands cupped up over his mouth, "We are about to start shooting. Everybody please stop talking. Don't move from your positions and don't crowd around the camera, please." After that, Naresh, with his hands around his mouth, announced that the shooting was about to begin and so everyone should remain silent, still, and away from the camera. Once again, the voice was heard shouting silence. Taking now, Patul Babu could see the owner of the voice. He was a stout man of medium height, and he stood by the camera. Around his neck hung something which looked like a small telescope. Was he the director? How strange! He hadn't even bothered to find out the name of the director. Stout means here fat. Telescope means an optical instrument designed to make distant objects appear nearer. Explanation is the first voice was heard again. The man shouted the words silence. Taking Patul saw the man was who was speaking. He was fat, had medium height, and was standing next to the camera. Something which looked like a telescope hung from his neck. Patul thought that maybe he was the director of the movie. He realized that he did not even know the name of the director in whose film he had got the role. Now a series of shouts followed in quick succession: start, sound, running, camera, rolling, action. He announced the words start, sound, running, camera, rolling, action one after the other quickly. Patul Babu noticed that as soon as the word action was said, a car came up from the crossing and pulled up in front of the office entrance. Then a young man in a grey suit and pink make-up shot out of the back of the car, took a few hurried steps towards the entrance and stopped abruptly. The next moment Patul Babu heard the shout cut and immediately the hubbub from the crowd resumed. Hubbub means here noise. Patul Babu observed that as soon as the word action was heard, the scene began. A car came up from the crossing and stopped at the entrance of the building. A young man wearing a grey colored suit and pink makeup walked out of the back seat, walked a few steps towards the entrance door, and then stopped. Just then the scene was over and the word cut was heard. As the shopping of that scene was over, the crowd resumed talking and moving. A man standing next to Patul Babu now turned to him. "I hope you recognize the young fellow," he asked. "Why no," said Patul Babu. Another onlooker standing next to Patul asked if he could recognize the young man. Patul replied in the negative. "Chanchal Kumar," said the man. "He is coming up fast, playing the lead in 4 films at the moment." He told him that the young man was Chanchal Kumar, an upcoming actor who was playing the lead role in 4 films. Patul Babu saw very few films, but he seemed to have heard the name Chanchal Kumar. It was probably the same boy Koti Babu was praising the other day. Nice makeup the fellow had on. If he had been wearing a Bengali dhoti and Punjabi instead of a suit and given a peacock to ride on, he would make a perfect god Kartik. Montos of Kancharapara, who was better known by his nickname Chinu, had the same kind of looks. He was very good at playing female parts, recalled Patul Babu. Although Patul Babu saw few films, he could recognize the name as he was the same boy who was praised by Patul's acquaintance Koti Babu. Patul felt that the boy was looking good in makeup. He imagined Chanchal Kumar wearing traditional Bengali dhoti and Punjabi kurta instead of the suit, riding a peacock, and thought that he was perfect to play the role of Lord Karthik. He felt that Chanchal Kumar resembled an old acquaintance, Montos, whose nickname was Chinu, who had lived in Kancharapara. Montos would play the roles of female characters on stage. This is the explanation of the above lines. Further lines are: Patul Babu now turned to his neighbor and asked in a whisper, "Who is the director?" The man raised his eyebrows and said, "Why don't you know? He has Baron Mullik. He has had three smash hits in a row." Smash hits means very successful. Patul asked the man standing next to him about the director of the film. The man was surprised that Patul did not know Baron Mullik, who was well known as he had made three successful films, one after the other. Well, at least he had gathered some useful information. It wouldn't have done for him to say he didn't know if his wife had asked in whose film he had acted and with which actor. Patul was glad that he had some information about the people involved in the film in which he was acting in case his wife asked him any questions. This is the explanation. Naresh Dutt now came up to him with tea in a small clay cup. "Here you are, sir. The hot tea will help your throat. Your turn will come shortly." Naresh Dutt walked up to Patul and offered him a cup of tea which would be good for his throat. He said that Patul's turn would come soon. Patul Babu now had to come out with it. "If you let me have my lines now, your lines come with me." Patul asked Naresh for his dialogue. Naresh took him along with him. Naresh Dutt went towards the three-legged instrument with Patul at his heels. Patul followed Naresh as he walked towards the three-legged instrument. "I say, Susanko." A young fellow in a short-sleeved shirt turned towards Naresh Dutt. "This gentleman wants his lines. Why don't you write them down on a piece of paper and give it to him? He is the one who—" "I know, I know." Naresh called out to Susanko, who was wearing a short sleeved shirt. He asked him to write down Patul's dialogue on a piece of paper and hand it to him. He started to give an introduction of Patul but stopped as Susanko said that he could recognize Patul. Susanko now turned to Patul Babu. "Come along, Grandpa." "I say, Jyoti, can I borrow your pen for a second? Grandpa wants his lines written down." The youngster Jyoti produced a red dot pen from his pocket and gave it to Susanko. Susanko tore off a page from the notebook he was carrying, scribbled something on it, and handed it to Patul Babu. Susanko addressed Patul Babu as Grandpa and asked him to accompany him. They walked up to another man called Jyoti. He borrowed a pen from him. It was a pen with red ink. Susanko tore a piece of paper from his notebook, wrote something on it, and handed it to Patul Babu. Patul Babu glanced at the paper and found that a single word had been scrawled on it. "Oh." Glanced means here to take a brief look. Patul looked at the paper for a short while and read the word "Oh" written on it. Patul Babu felt a sudden throbbing in his head. He wished he could take off his jacket. The heat was unbearable. Susanko said, "What's the matter, Grandpa? You don't seem too pleased." Were these people pulling his leg? Was the whole thing a gigantic hoax? A meek, harmless man like him, and they had to drag him into the middle of the city to make a laughing stock out of him? How could anyone be so cruel? Throbbing means to beat. Gigantic means huge size. Hoax means joke. Meek means quiet. Explanation is here. Patul was disturbed after reading the one word dialogue given to him. He was uneasy due to intense heat, which now became unbearable, and he wanted to remove the woolen jacket that he had been wearing. Susanko could make out that Patul was unhappy and asked him the reason. Patul felt that all of them were making fun of him and that the shooting was a trick to fool him. He was a quiet man who never harmed anyone, and these people had got him so far to the middle of the city only to laugh at him. He thought that they all were cruel. Patul Babu said in a hardly audible voice, I find it rather strange. Why, Grandpa? Just oh, is that all I have to say? Patul Babu was disappointed and complained in a low voice that it was strange that he had only one word dialogue. Oh. Susanko's eyebrows shot up. What are you saying, Grandpa? You think that's nothing? Why, this is a regular speaking part in a Baron Mulik film. Do you realize what that means? Susanko reacted sharply and said that Patol's role was a regular speaking role and that's true in Baron Mulik film. He said that it was a big thing and Patol could not realize what it meant. Why, you are the luckiest of actors. Do you know that till now more than 100 persons have appeared in this film who have had nothing to say. They just walked past the camera. Some didn't even walk, they just stood in one spot. There were others whose faces didn't register at all. Even today, look at all those people standing by the lamp post. They all appear in today's scene but have nothing to say. Even our hero Chanchal Kumar has no lines to speak today. You are the only one who has. See, he said that Patul was lucky as more than 100 persons had acted in the film so far and had nothing to say at all. They merely walked in front of the camera, some of them merely stood in front of it, while some were not even visible properly. He pointed out towards a group of people standing by the lamppost who were to appear before the camera that day but had nothing to say at all. He added that even the lead actor Chanchal Kumar did not have any dialogues that day and so highlighted that Patol's role was unique. Now the young man called Jyoti came up, put his hand on Patul Babu's shoulder and said, Listen, Grandpa, I will tell you what you have to do. Chanchal Kumar is a rising young executive. He is informed that an embezzlement has taken place in his office and he comes to find out what has happened. He gets out of his car and charges uh, across the pavement towards the entrance. Just then he collides with an absent minded pedestrian. That's you. You are hurt in the head and say, Oh. But Chanchal Kumar pays no attention to you and goes into the office. The fact that he ignores you reflects his extreme preoccupation. See, just think how crucial the shot is. Executive and senior official. Embezzlement means here theft or misappropriation of funds placed in one's trust or belonging to one's employer. Payment means footpath. Preoccupation means concentration. Crucial means important. Explanation of the above lines is Jyoti kept his hand on Patul's shoulder, addressed him as Grandpa as he was aged, and started describing the scene in which Patul had to perform. He said that Chanchal Kumar would be playing the role of a young businessman who rushed to his office on being informed that his employees had cheated him. As he walks hurriedly, he bumps into a pedestrian played by Patol Babu. Patol Babu hurts his head and says, Oh, but Chanchal Kumar does not pay attention as he is in a hurry. Then Jyoti tries to convince him by saying that he is a part of a very important scene. I hope everything is clear now, said Susanko. Now, if you just move over to where you were standing, the fewer people crowd around here, the better. There's one more shot left before your turn comes. As they had described the role in detail, Sasanko requested Patul to get back as there was one more scene to be shot before his turn. This is the explanation. Further lines are Patul Babu went slowly back to the pawn shop. Standing in the shade, he glanced down at the paper in his hand, cast a quick look around to see if anyone was watching, crumpled the paper into a ball and threw it into the roadside drain. Crumpled means crushed. Explanation is Patol Babu went back and stood in the shade of the pawn shop. He looked at the paper in his hand, looked around him to see if anyone was watching, and as no one was looking at him, he crushed the piece of paper which had the word O written on it and threw it in the drain on the side of the road. O. A sigh came out of the depths of his heart. Just one word. No, not even a word. A sound. Oh. Patul Babu was disheartened that his dialogue was merely a sound, not even a word. He took a long sad breath to express his disappointment. The heat was stifling. The jacket seemed to weigh a ton. Patul Babu couldn't keep standing in one spot anymore. His legs felt heavy. Stifling means suffocating. The weather became hotter, and Patul Babu did not want to wear the woolen jacket anymore as he was no longer interested in performing the role. He could not stand as his legs were unable to bear his weight. He moved up to the office beyond the pawn shop and sat down on the steps. It was nearly 9:30 on Sunday mornings. Songs in praise of the goddess Kali were sung in Karali Babu's house. Patul Babu went there every week and enjoyed it. He walked up to the office, which was further ahead of the pawn shop, and sat on its steps. The clock showed the time as 9:30, and Patul Babu thought that it would have been better if he would have gone to Karali Babu's house instead. Every Sunday they would sing songs in praise of goddess Durga, and Patul Babu enjoyed it. What if he were to go there now? What harm would there be? Why waste a Sunday morning in the company of these useless people and be made to look foolish on top of that? Patul Babu wanted to leave and go to Karali Babu's house. He did not want to waste his Sunday among the film crew whom he considered useless and who were making a fool of him. Silence, stuff and nonsense. To hell with your silence. They had to put up this pompous show for something too trivial. Things were much better on the stage. Pompous means too serious and full of importance. Trivial means of little value. The word silence was heard again as Patul Babu was angry. He thought that the entire shooting scene was just like making a mountain of a molehill. He felt that the stage and theatre were much better than films. The stage. A faint memory was stirred up in Patul Babu's mind, some priceless words of advice given in a deep, mellow voice. Remember one thing, Patul, however small a part you are offered, never consider it beneath your dignity to accept it. As an artist, your aim should be to make the most of your opportunity and squeeze the last drop of meaning out of your lines. A play involves the work of many, and it is the combined effort of many that makes a success of the play. It was Mr. Pakrasi who gave the advice. Gogun Pakrasi, Patul Babu's mentor, a wonderful actor without a tract of vanity in him, a saintly person, and an actor in a million. Dignity means here the state of being of respect, vanity means pride. Explanation is Patul Babu was reminded of his days as a stage actor, and the words of his mentor Gogun Pakrasi were repeated in his mind. Gogun was a fine actor and was down to earth. He had guided Patul that no role was small and that he should honor the opportunity that he got. An actor must put in his best to make the play, which involved the effort of many people, a success. There was something else which Mr. Pakrasi used to say. Each word spoken in a play is like a fruit in a tree. Not everyone in the audience has across to it, but you, the actor, must know how to pluck it, get at its essence, and serve it up to the audience for their edification. Edification means the moral or intellectual improvement of someone. Explanation is Gogan Pagrasi also said that each word spoken by an actor is like a fruit on a tree. The entire audience cannot understand it. It was the duty of the actor to speak the dialogue and, along with his acting, convey the real meaning to the audience for their enlightenment. The memory of his guru made Patol Babu bow his head in obeisance. Obeisance means respect. Patul Babu bent his head forward to pay respect to his guide Gogan Pakrasi. Was it really true that there was nothing in the part he had been given today? He had only one word to say, oh, but was that word so devoid of meaning as to be dismissed summarily? Divide means lacking. Now Patul Babu reconsidered his role and dialogue. He felt that the role and the single word dialogue were not that worthless that he should refuse to perform. Oh, 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 oh. Patul Babu began giving the exclamation a different inflection each time he uttered it. After doing it for a number of times, he made an astonishing discovery. The same exclamation, when spoken in different ways, carried different shades of meaning. Inflection means here change in tone of the sound, uttered means spoke, astonishing means amazing. Explanation is Patul Babu spoke the word oh a few times and he realized that there were many different tones in which he could speak it. Each tone reflected a different meaning. A man, when hurt, said oh in a quite different way. Despair brought forth another kind of oh. Sorrow provoked yet another kind. In fact, there were so many kinds of ohs, the short oh, the long drawn oh shouted and oh whispered, the high pitched oh and the low pitched oh, and the oh starting low and ending high, and the oh starting high and ending low. Strange. Patul Babu suddenly felt that he could write a whole thesis on that one monosyllabic exclamation. Why had he felt so disheartened when this single word contained a gold mine of meaning? The true actor could make a mark with this one single syllable. Provoked means to give rise, thesis means argument, monosyllabic means word having a single vowel sound. Syllable means here a unit of pronunciation having one vowel sound. Explanation is Patul Babu realized that the word O could be spoken in different ways to indicate different feelings like being hurt, sad, or unhappy. Further, the word could be spoken quickly, it could be dragged into a long O, it could be shouted out, whispered, spoken in a high or low pitch, could be started in a low pitch and ended in a high pitch, and vice versa. He was amazed at this discovery and he could write a book on the word which had a single vowel sound. Now he felt that his initial disappointment was pointless, as his dialogue was full of meaning and was worthy for him. He could display his acting skills through this valuable dialogue. Silence. The director had raised his voice again. Patul Babu could see young Jyoti clearing the crowd. There was something he had to ask him. He went quickly over to him. How long will it be before my turn comes, brother? Why are you so impatient, grandpa? You have to learn to be patient in this line of business. It will be another half an hour before you are called. The director again shouted the word silence and Jyoti was dispersing the crowd as the next scene was ready to be shot. Patul Babu walked up to Jyoti and asked him when would his turn come. Jyoti told him to wait patiently as there was another half an hour before his turn. That's all right. I will certainly wait. I'll be in the side street across the road. Okay, so long as you don't sneak off. Start sound. Patul Babu crossed the road on tiptoe and went into the quiet little side street. It was good that he had a little time on his hands. While these people didn't seem to believe in rehearsals, he himself would rehearse his own bit. There was no one about. There were office buildings, so very few people lived here. Those who did, such as shopkeepers, had all gone to watch the shooting. Tiptoe means to walk quietly and quickly. Rehearsals means a practice. Explanation is Patul Babu said that he would wait for his turn in the side street across the road. Jyoti had said that it was fine as long as he was there for the shooting. Patul walked quickly into the quiet lane. He had some time to practice his dialogue. He believed in practicing before his performance. There was no one in the street, and so it was the perfect place for him to practice. Patulbabu cleared his throat and started enunciating the syllable in various ways. Along with that, he worked out how he would react physically when the collision took place, how his features would be twisted in pain, how he would fling out his arms, how his body would crouch to express pain and surprise. All these he performed in various ways in front of a large glass window. Enunciating means to pronounce clearly, crouch means bend forward after the collision, fling means throw forcefully. Explanation is Patul Babu started speaking his dialogues in different ways. He stood in front of a large glass window and enacted his role. He practiced making the facial expressions he would have after the collision, the way he would bend forward and express pain and shock. Patul Babu was called in exactly half an hour. Now he had completely got over his apathy. All he felt now was a keen anticipation and suppressed excitement. It was the feeling he used to feel 20 years ago just before he stepped onto the stage. Apathy means lack of interest, anticipation means expectation, suppressed means forcibly put an end to. Patul Babu's turn came after half an hour. He was no longer disinterested, rather, he looked forward to performing well. He felt the same 20 years ago when he performed on the stage. The director Baran Mulik called Patul Babu to him. I hope you know what you are supposed to do. He asked. Yes, sir. Very good. I will first say start sound. The recordist will reply by saying running. That will be your cue to start walking from that pillar and for the hero to come out of the car and make a dash for the office. You work out your steps so that the collision takes place at this spot here. The hero ignores you and strides into the office. While you register pain by saying, oh, stop for a couple of seconds, then resume walking. Okay. Cue means a thing said or done that serves as a signal to an actor. Dash means to run in a great hurry. Collision means hit. Strides means walk. Resume means to begin after a pause. Explanation is the director Baran Murali asked Patul whether he knew his role, in which Patul replied that he did. He further told him that first he would speak the words start sound. The recordist would reply by saying running, which would be a signal for Patul to start walking from a pillar, and for Chanchal Kumar, who would come out of his car and walk fast towards the office. He told Patul to calculate the number of steps he would take so that they would hit each other at a particular spot. Further, he says that after the collision, the hero would ignore Patul and walk into the office while Patul would react with the dialogue of "Oh" to show pain and after stopping for a few seconds resume walking. Patul suggested a rehearsal, but Baron Mulik shook his head impatiently. There's a large patch of cloud approaching the sun, he said. The scene must be shot in sunlight. Patul suggested that they practice once, but Baron Mulik refused. There was a huge cloud gathering in the sky, and he wanted to shoot the scene in bright sunlight. He was in a hurry. One question, please. Yes. An idea had occurred to Patul Babu while rehearsing. He now came out with it. Here, I was thinking, if I had a newspaper open in my hand and if the collision took place while I had my eyes on the paper, then perhaps. Baron Mully cut him short by addressing a bystander who was carrying a Bengali newspaper. Do you mind handling your paper to this gentleman just for this one shot? Bystander means a person who is present at an event or incident but does not take part. Patul Babu presented another idea which had struck him while he was practicing. He asked Baron Mullik if he could have a newspaper in his hand and look into at the time of the collision, then maybe. His words were interrupted by Baron as he asked a person standing nearby who was holding a newspaper to give it to Patul for the shot. Thanks. Now you take your position beside the pillar. Chanchal, are you ready? Yes, sir. Good. Silence. Baron thanked the person, told Patul to stand by the pillar, called out to Chanchal Kumar for the shot, and screamed silence. Baron Mullik raised his hand, then brought it down again, saying, just a minute, case 2. I think if we gave the pedestrian a mustache, it would be more interesting. What kind, sir? Walrus, Ronald, Coleman, or butterfly? I have them already. Butterfly, butterfly, and make it snappy. Mustache, a strip of hair left to grow above the upper lip. Snappy means quick. Explanation is Baron raised his hand as the shot was about to begin but dropped it abruptly and stopped it. He also became interested in details and called out to the makeup man Kestu. He asked him to put a mustache on Patol's face. It would make his character interesting. Kestu offered the different styles of mustache he had, Wallace, Ronald, Coleman, or butterfly, to which Baron replied that butterfly shaped mustache would be suitable. He ordered him to be quick as they were running short of time. The elderly makeup man went up to Patol Babu, took out a small grey mustache from a box and stuck it on with spirit gum below Patol Babu's nose. Patol Babu said, I hope it won't come off at the time of the collision. The makeup man smiled. Collision? He said, even if you were to wrestle with Dara Singh, the mustache would stay in place. Kestu took out a small grey colored mustache from a box and fixed it just below Patol's nose with spirit gum. Patul hoped that the mustache would not fall off his face. Kestu replied that he had pasted it well and that even if Patul wrestled with the legendary wrestler Dara Singh, it would not come out. Patul Babu had a quick glance in a mirror which the man was holding. True enough, the mustache suited him very well. Patul Babu inwardly commended the director's perspicacity. Commended means here praised. Perspicacity means ability to understand somebody or something quickly and accurately. Patul Babu looked at his face in the mirror. His face looked better with the mustache and he praised the director for his talent. Silence, silence. The business with the mustache had provoked a wave of comments from the spectators, which Baron Mullick's shout now silenced. Spectators means a person who watches at a show. The interruption caused by the mustache episode had created interest in the onlookers, who had started discussing it and were silenced by Baron Mullick. Silence, silence. Patul Babu noticed that most of the bystanders' eyes were turned towards him. Start sound. All the onlookers were looking at Patul, and then the director shouted, Start sound. Patul Babu cleared his throat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 steps would take him to the spot where the collision was to take place, and Chanchal Kumar would have to walk 4 steps. So, if both were to start together, Patul Babu would have to walk a little faster than the hero, or else running. Patul Babu cleared his throat and memorized again that he had to take 5 steps in order to reach the spot of collision. while Chanchal Kumar had to walk 4 steps only. This meant that if both of them started walking at the same time, Patul had to walk faster. His thought was interrupted by the sound running. Patul Babu held the newspaper open in his hand. What he had to do when saying "oh" was mix 60 parts of irritation with 40 parts of surprise. Action. Patul Babu held the newspaper in one hand and memorized the expression with which he would speak the word "oh." He would mix the feeling of irritation and surprise in the ratio of 60 to 40. Just then the word action was heard. Clop, 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 wham. Patul Babu saw stars before his eyes. The hero's head had banged against his forehead, and an excruciating pain had robbed him of his senses for a few seconds. Saw stars before his eyes means an idiom which means to take a blow to the head that is hard enough that you see specks of light that resemble stars. Excruciating means very painful. Explanation is Patul Babu started walking, took 5 steps and collided into Chanchal Kumar with a lot of force. The impact of the collision was so strong that Patul Babu lost his vision for a while. Chanchal's head had hit Patul's forehead and Patul felt intense pain. He became unconscious. But the next moment, by a supreme effort of will, Patul Babu pulled himself together and mixing 50 parts of anguish with the 25 of surprise and 25 of irritation, cried "oh," and after a brief pause resumed his walk. Cut. Patul's willpower came into force. He stood up despite the pain, spoke "oh," mixing the feeling of pain, surprise, and irritation in the Rasan 52 25 to 25 and resumed walking. The director screamed cut as the scene was over. Was that right? Asked Patul anxiously, stepping towards Baron Mulik. Jolly good. Why, you are quite an actor. Susanko, just take a look at the sky through the dark glass, will you? Patul Babu was curious to know if he had performed well and asked the director about it. He replied that Patul was an actor indeed and then resumed work. He called out to Susanko to look at the sky with a dark colored glass and check whether the cloud was gathering or not. Jyoti now came up to Patul Babu and said, I hope Grandpa wasn't hurt too badly. My God, said Chanchal Kumar, massaging his head. You timed it so well that I nearly passed out. Jyoti walked up to Patul and showed concern as he was hurt badly. Chanchal Kumar massaged his head where it had hit Patul and said that Patul had timed it perfectly and that he had almost fainted after the collision. Naresh Dutt elbowed his way through the crowd, came up to Patul Babu and said, Please go back where you were standing. I will come to you in a short while and do the necessary. Naresh pushed the crowd aside with his elbow and walked up to Patul. He directed him to stand aside and wait for him. He would come in a while to pay him for his performance. Patul Babu took his place once again by the pawn shop. The cloud had just covered the sun and brought down the temperature. Nevertheless, Patul Babu took off his woolen jacket and then heaved a sigh of relief. A feeling of total satisfaction swept over him. Heaved means here produced a sound. Patul Babu stood in the shade of the pawn shop as the cloud had gathered in the sky. It weather became cooler, but nevertheless he removed the woolen jacket that he had been wearing. He was satisfied by his performance. He had done his job really well. All these years of struggle hadn't blunted his sensibility. Blunted sensibility means reduced his acting talent. Patul had retained his acting skills despite all the struggle of life. Gogan Pakrasi would have been pleased with his performance, but all the labor and imagination he had put into this one shot. Were these people able to appreciate that? He doubted it. They just got hold of some people, got them to go through certain motions, paid them for their labors, and forgot all about it. Paid them, yes, but how much? 10, 15, 20 rupees. It is true that he needed money very badly, but what was 20 rupees? When measured against the intense satisfaction of a small job done with perfection and dedication. Intense means extreme. Explanation is Patul thought that his guide Gogun Pakrasi would have been happy to see his good performance. Patul felt that the film crew did not appreciate his hard work. They just called anyone, asked him to do the required act, paid him, and forgot it. He thought that they would pay him a mere amount of 10, 15, or maximum 20 rupees. He did need money, but the amount of 20 rupees was nothing as compared to the immense satisfaction he had got by performing well. He did not want to undermine his effort by taking the small amount of money in return for it. Patul was satisfied with the great amount of satisfaction he experienced by putting in his best and performing well. 10 minutes or so later, Naresh went looking for Patul Babu near the pawn shop and found that he was not there. That's odd, the man hadn't been paid yet. What a strange film. After about 10 minutes, Naresh went to the pawn shop, but Patul Babu was nowhere to be seen. He thought that Patul was a strange man who had left without taking the money. The sun has come out, Baron Mulik was heard shouting, "Silence, silence. Naresh, hurry up and get these people out of the way." The writer tells us that once again the sun had come out in the sky and Baron Mulik resumed shooting. He called out to Naresh to clear the place for the next scene. The work continued and no one was bothered about Patul who had left without taking his pay. So in this way the whole chapter comes to an end. Thank you.